Are you feeling stifled, worn out, or just bored with your 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 job? I want you to know that you're not alone. I was there too till I started asking and wondering if there was another way to live and work where I could actually be more of me. In this episode, I bring to you real conversations with real people who have chosen to step out of their 9 to 5 employment and create a life for themselves that is more in line with their inner rhythm. Good morning, Saloni. Thank you for coming aboard on this show as a guest. So grateful to you for that, for coming up as you and for sharing your story. So, gonna hand it over to you right away. Tell us. So, this series, as you know, is called 9 to 5, and I'm really curious to know beyond 9 to 5. I'm really curious to know from you what you were doing earlier in life, in your role in an employed job. So take our guests through what you were doing. How was your day like? When did the thought first come to you that you could do something outside of that? And
Yeah, super. Firstly, good morning, and thank you, Ramya, for this. I like having conversations in the morning. It allows me to set the tone for the day. So I'm happy about that. Um, what led me to be on 9 to 5? Um, so I come from a business background. I'm a Gujarati. Father was a diamond merchant. Mum is a home entrepreneur. Um, and I distinctly remember I was in my eighth grade, which is about 14, 13, 14, around that age, when I remember declaring to myself a couple of things, one of which was one day I will have my empire. It was not even one day, it was like, oh, one day I will have my empire and I will have multiple businesses and I'll be empowering women and employing people. And if you ask me what, I would have some vague ideas. But this was like, it was my thing to do. Go to the sea face thing. I believe I can fly and just dream of that empire. Since then, I went into corporate. And my last gig was actually at Paytm. I was the national account manager for the foods offline division for Paytm Wallet and the regional city manager for Mumbai City in foods offline, which meant that I was responsible for about 12,000 restaurants in Mumbai on in terms of not me directly, but like my team, getting them onboarded, ensuring that our presence is there, and it's there in an ongoing manner. That was the Bombay part of it, and then the national part was all accounts based in the West, like it's a large food-based chains in the West. We work with them to onboard them, come up with brand partnerships, come up with ideas to kind of increase usage of the Paytm QR codes, as well as see if that can become a reason why people choose XYZ restaurant over another. Like in a nutshell, yeah, but it was fun because I would get involved with integration. I would talk to people. Like I think I like that. Um, but I had increasingly been, I had got the itch in my previous role, which was at a startup called Litmus World in the customer experience feedback space. Um, at that time, I think I was still not mentally ready to take the plunge, but I had got the itch already that I think it's time to fly from the nest and start my own thing. And yeah, so
I,
something which was in the making for I don't know what,
yeah.
12,
So
15,
I
15.
love that analogy, Saloni. Fly from the nest, right? Because the nest symbolizing really something that's comforting and where you can grow, incubate, grow your wings, get ready. So when you decided to fly from the nest, what were your, if there were any, any concerns, worries, fears, resistances, internal or external? It could also be other people in your life who might have given you the advice and the warning and the
I think the biggest concern was I decided to do it without a plan in mind. So my own internal concern was, and it was a concern, but also the exciting bit was if somebody asked me क्या करोगी, I was like मुझे नहीं पता, बस इतना पता है अभी करना है. And so when you jump in without a plan, right, there is a certain amount of fear that you will start languishing. And yeah, like as a woman, we are already stigmatized as taking breaks on our whims and fancies, which was not like, yes, it was a break because I fancied it, but it was not an irresponsible one. But the concerns were actually very surprisingly not my family. They were from my friends and my peers who were like, why are you giving up a job? It pays you decent, and if you hustle, you will definitely get a better paying job. And um, one of the things is I wanted to work with people I like, yeah, maybe, look, explore a couple more places, you'll find the culture where you fit in and the work you like. There were lots of these concerns because I was going in without a plan. Um, so for me, honestly, at that point, I was very certain about this. It was the world which was more scared for me than I was for me. And it was about make sure you have a timeline, and that you start working after whatever time, could be 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months. And that actually got me a bit more, I would say, annoyed. Honestly, I would just get annoyed, and I would be like, yeah, I get it. It can be a black hole, but I I do not want to set myself a timeline. I did eventually set one. It didn't do me good. Firstly, doing that for me, because I think I'd spent the last couple of years looking inward to understand how I function. So, to anybody who's listening, take the advice of everybody, but um, yeah, like listen to your heart. You know you best.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Me,
yeah, the biggest resistance was the world, not me really.
Saloni, that was so well expressed. In fact, there are three directions I want to go from here, literally asking you about how, but I'll start with one. I have to choose one for this conversation to make it linear. So I'm going to actually ask you more about how you dealt with all the, well-intentioned, well-meaning advice that you got from friends and peers, because I see a lot of people getting that. I mean, I've got that as well. And it's, what I've seen is that it takes actually something that we need to do inside of us to even make ourselves listen to our voice, prioritize it ahead of all these other voices, especially when they are more and we are one. So how did you work on that?
I think it was not then. The work started before. As I said, I wanted to quit in the previous role. Um, and that was because I think I started doing a poetry course, a 3-month poetry course in 2017. And it just, so if you write and truly write, you cannot do it unless you change the way you experience the world. You have to truly experience stuff. And when you start doing that, there is no option but to listen to yourself. One. Two, I started getting surrounded by people who looked beyond the 9 to 5, who looked beyond the money. So when you come from a IIM type A MBA format, there is only one, what do you call it? There's only one definition of success, and you're surrounded by it. And I think the course, more than the poetry, it was just the overall experience of meeting people from corporate, non-corporate, but it just gave me a glimpse into a different life and a different approach to life. And I met friends and I met people who just changed the way I look at success. And there had been ongoing conversations with friends, and I still think it's an ongoing conversation for me. What is success? Yes, some of it is your typical type A, but a lot of it is different, and I will get to that. Um, Post the course, and like also it started with me being like, kabhi to yaar, stage pe perform karna hai, poetry, and eventually enrolling for the course. It was like taking a small steps and things you want to do, but you're scared of doing. And the course allowed me to do that. We put up a performance, and I did a very um, shocking performance, for lack of a better word. And that was, I think, liberating for me to write that piece and perform that piece. And then I think I quit the startup and I went for Vipassana.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to ask you about that, but just to sort of, recap some of the, I think, very, very valuable points that we can learn from your experience and your journey. I love the part where you said, the inner work actually started ahead, right? So in that moment when there are all these people giving all the advice and our brain tends to get confused, sometimes that's not when we want to do the inner work. The inner work has to be done ahead of time, and the resilience, those muscles have to be built. And also the way that happened for you is it's very for me it's very symbolic, and it's also it sort of goes in line with the research here, which is that we are like the way we think is sort of reflective of the top 5 people that we have conversations with, whether it's about our income level or ambition or what we choose to do and how we think. So really getting into that poetry course and meeting a different world of people who were different from your IIM batchmates, who were having a certain kind of conversations, and having those conversations outside, which sort of what I'm seeing is that it probably changed the conversations you were having inside as well, your own mental models and ways of looking at success, like you said, the definitions of
It
success.
normalized a lot of what I was thinking. I mean, I started feeling like I'm not cuckoo. Let me put it that way.
Yes. And of course, if you're 1 in 50 and 49 are saying this is what success means, and you think otherwise, the most logical conclusion is I'm cuckoo, they are fine. And so really finding this other tribe was fascinating. So what I love about that is the outer work that you did by signing up for that poetry course really changed it changed your inner work. It made you do the inner work, which then empowered you to take that next step. But let's go back to the other inner work you did through Vipassana. That is,
Yes.
I so want to know about that.
I am an extremely talkative person. And today what people see is a toned down version. So the first thing everybody was like, "Tu Vipassana jayegi," like a part of my they were like, "You'll go for Vipassana, you can't keep shut for 10 days, it's impossible." And I think that was the first time I think my own conviction in me was so strong. And I was like, not talking is absolutely not going to be the problem for me. The problem is going to be sitting for 10.5 hours in meditation. I was in fact very excited. So it just, for me, that light bulb went off that people often don't know. And in hindsight, I think I realized that the bulb went off. At that point, I just laughed and I was like, "Listen, you don't know me. You just see this girl who comes all bubbly and smiley and, on and being like, okay, guys, let's do this sort of a thing." And, yapping away somebody's ears at somebody's ears. Um, I was very excited about not talking for 10 days. Um, I was very excited about also calming my inner dialogue. For people who don't talk to yourselves, please do. Side note, but um, I wanted to see. I was very excited to see what happens, because the one thing I learned from talking and researching was no two experiences are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just went in with no expectations, and the biggest takeaway from Vipassana for me was something called anicca, which means impermanence. And I think that is a concept which we cerebrally know. And I got a glimpse, I would say, of experiencing it during my 10 days of Vipassana, as to how deep that goes. It's not something as mega as the seasons changing, or that's very, I would say it's very true, but it's very meta too. Like not even meta, but it's very, you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it. But when you can start feeling it within you, um, and if you're an entrepreneur, that impermanence is something you have to be okay with. I would say in our world today, everybody is just an entrepreneur. But at least if you're going to be an entrepreneur, impermanence is something you have to absolutely be okay with. Because you may have a great month, a great week, a great year, and there is no guarantee the next will be the same.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in 9 to 5, the biggest risk usually before pre-pandemic was I won't get my promotion, right? Or so for me, the Vipassana was just, I think it was the biggest takeaway was impermanence. And this is witnessing. There were lots of takeaways, but witnessing impermanence was one. Um,
So,
and I think
yeah, sorry, go on.
the other was just listening to my body. I think we don't listen to our bodies. Our bodies have memory, and sometimes memory beyond what we realize. So yeah.
Beautiful. So, Saloni, thank you. I love where this conversation is taking us. And for those of you who are watching this and who don't know what Vipassana, the Vipassana retreat is, it's a 10-day, it's a Buddhist form of meditation, 10-day retreat in silence. But of course, and like Saloni said, we'll end up meditating like 10 and a half hours a day. And that's all you do. And you're completely with yourself and your thoughts. And of course, you're guided and taught. And you feel the senses. And Saloni, we share something else in common. So Vipassana was a huge gateway in my life as well. And, it's like you said, you're an extrovert, but you felt like people didn't know who you really were. Like for me, Vipassana was, I realized at some level, I didn't know who I was till I went for Vipassana. And I was so comfortable in that silence. And so I could receive me and start to understand me. I won't say it's over, that journey. But I loved the other connection you made about anicca, right? Which is really soaking in the essence of life itself and our lives and our existence as impermanent, something that's driven into you during Vipassana. And the way you connected that to the permission to live and create your life as an entrepreneur beyond the 9 to 5. And, so because embedded in that anicca is really the permission to change, to let yourself change, right? If everything is anyway changing and not stable, then why should I hold on and cling on to that salary or that good job or, the voices of all the other people, who told you, you can get a better job, you can get even better, you have these degrees, you have this. Why would you want to cling on when things are changing? It just allows you to flow. So I love the way you use that as the inner part of you that helped you make this choice. And I also love the other point you brought out about the body itself, because really, a lot of us exclude our bodies because we are hired, right, for our brains. We are not the sportsmen and the coolies who are hired for our bodies and muscles. So the body almost tends to get excluded from our work life. But the body is part of our existence, and the body might not want to sit on the desk all day. It might want to dance and move and have its own awareness and have its own agendas, a lot of which, at least for me, when I was in a 9 to 5 job, the body's agenda just got squished. And then I was dragging my body along with me to work, which, is the other gateway to freedom that, when you move beyond the 9 to 5, you can now include your body in the creation of your life. So thank you for bringing that out so beautifully. And like you said, when you include it, it's not just like this little tantrum child that you're including. You're bringing in its wisdom, you're bringing in its awareness and everything that it can contribute to us as well. Thank you so much, Saloni.
Yeah.
So next question for you, okay? Just in terms of the fears, because you did mention that, because there was no plan, jumping into it or taking the plunge, as you said, it does bring up fear. And perhaps you addressed that already with Vipassana and anicca, but I'm curious to know if there was anything else that you did to overcome this fear, because everyone faces it. Like all my coaching clients have faced it. And anything you can share on that, what did you do?
I would say I'm perpetually afraid. Fear does
that again?
I'm perpetually afraid.
Okay.
It's not that the fear goes away. So Chris K said this to my coach Anand, who then said this to me. I'm paraphrasing. That courage is taking a leap of faith in the face of fear. And I mean, I received that much later, but I don't think it was fear went away. It was more of fuck it. It was legit more of darna to hai hi. And I was not, honestly, I was liking a lot of the work I did, but I could sense I was not happy. I won't even say happy. There was just something which didn't sit well with me. And while people may romanticize entrepreneurship, it comes with its own share of anxieties and panic attacks. And I actually had a bald. You can see this. This is because there's new hair growing because I had a bald spot there last year. Um, this is where I'm gonna remember. I read this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, and he said something very. I'm going to paraphrase, but he said something about there will always be problems. You need to decide what problems you choose. Um, I mean, and so I was afraid, and my biggest fear was I like doing nothing, which means I will end up doing a lot and nothing, and have nothing to show for it. What really worked for me is I had my army of supporters, um, and I found the people who um, either in an on an everyday basis, or they were called away, were there to be like, it's your adventure. It was my gift to myself when I turned 50, and I was without a plan. So for me, the way to deal with that fear was, क्या होगा? What's my worst case? नहीं चलेगा. ठीक है. The one thing I know how to do is tell a story. Um, and an authentic story. So I think for me, I had already mentally understood what I would have to do if this didn't work. So it really helped to know what my backup was.
Beautiful. Lovely. So, what I'm taking away is, one is, of course, like you just said, having a backup, having a fallback plan or a plan B. And the second beautiful thing, which, that the fear is there, it's not gone away, but you act despite that fear, or like Elizabeth Gilbert says, you just allow fear to drive with you, but fear sits in the back seat and you take control in the front seat. So the fear,
make friends with it.
Yeah, make friends with it. It's anyway there, but you still choose to act. The other lovely, takeaway I got from what you shared was really the presence of cheerleaders and supporters and people who have your back. So do you want to take us through some of them, because truly, like, we live in a village, and while for some people it might work to do it all by yourself, the older I grow, the more I realize we don't do anything all by ourselves, and there's always, this, team of people
I am a loner extrovert, if that makes sense. Which means I need my alone time as much as I love meeting people and talking to them and gives me energy. I am a little bit of I want to be part of a team, but within the team, I will be there, but I also need my lone wolf space. And that kind of happened because a very dear friend back then, just have those conversations with me. My parents never pressured me. They just spoke to me, and once they knew that I have some stuff in mind, they never pressured me to take a job there. I think for me, my biggest cheerleaders were my parents. They are literally the wind beneath my wings. Because there is something that comes, when your parents show belief in you when you don't. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little emotional because I lost dad last year, and I think he was my biggest supporter. It took me a good 9 to 10 months to come into a space where I felt I had some idea where I was going. I'd started working 3 months after I quit. I had done a couple of experiments for like with my own identity. I was like, I've always had an idea of who Saloni is. What if I break that idea? And just to see what do I want to hold on to when I break that idea of who Saloni is. And I think everybody in life should, for once, challenge their identity. And then
Saloni, I'm going to ask you to talk more about this because it's going to be so useful for anyone listening. The words that you used about adventures, being adventurous with your own identity, with your own self-image, with who you thought you've been and who you thought you are and who you thought you can be. Tell us more about this. This is gold.
So I have always been that child, who everybody said lots of potential, went after my 10th grade, went to this career counselor. And she said, you do whatever you want to do. Commerce, science, art. So there was always this thing of, oh, you are high potential or a high pot, as the corporate calls it. And I remember I was in my 3rd grade and I was sitting on the back bench with some of my closest friends then. And we were all just somehow discussing and they're like, Are tu to matlab career woman banegi and you don't agree because I was a rebel from back then. I mean I didn't even know it. I was a feminist before I understood the word feminist. Right? So they were like, tu to career karegi, tu thodi na itna matlab dharam and religion, which is and housework and all. So my entire life I believed and it was reinforced that I am that ambitious career woman. And I was like, I had unfortunately also looked down on being a homemaker. So I was like, what happens if I spend a month in a different city where I don't really know too many people? I don't tell them my background of my education or the fancy places I have worked at because I have some brands on my resume, right? And what if I actually tell them I do nothing? And it was a 1-month experiment. I went and lived with my then boyfriend for about a month. It was almost a simulated homemaker situation. And something I had rejected with every fiber in my being for I don't know how many years now. I did realize it doesn't work for me. But I also realized I had some mistaken notions about what I care about. As in, I do care about success in the typical way to an extent. I do care about making money. I had embraced the hippie side of me so much. I was like, yes, I'm material here. So that experiment was like, what if I reject everything that makes Saloni feel like she has worth? Can I then find worth in me? Because I absolutely suck at doing domestic stuff. It just doesn't make sense to me. Give me and tell me, make a presentation, look at some data, analyze in Excel, and I'm like, yeah, I will jump right in 10 minutes and I'll have some sense of what I'm doing. Put me in the kitchen and I'm a babbling baboon. Or a headless chicken. So it was damn funny. It was very, very funny to. It was also interesting because it was not all bad. I did enjoy going to the terrace to hang the clothes and just stand and look at it. Luckily, he had a terrace with a view of lots of trees. So I would wear like this little blue dress I have and go in the afternoons and just do that. And I realized that I need that balance of a slow, nothing life, but I do also need to feed the type A in me with some success and the money and
Wow.
and everything. So I think I allowed myself the time to just be with me. And that took me about 9-10 months. And I think I still do that. If I feel that I need that space, my business grows very slow. And I get worried about scale, but I'm not too worried. I'm okay with my pace.
That's beautiful. So many takeaways again. So the latest about the pace and scale that's right for you. But before we come to that, something, the experiment that you described about going to a different city where you didn't know anybody and just literally challenging that idea that identity of this is who Saloni is and this is how what everyone thinks Saloni is can be so liberating. Not just liberating, it can be so educational, and it can show up so many data points and awareness about yourself, in allowing you to pick from your old identity the parts that were truly, yes, you resonate with it, and nothing is permanent anywhere, nature, right? And then sort of even opened up to new things, like sitting on the terrace and gazing at the sky, parts which you might not have really included. I highly recommend this to anyone if they want to do this. I did this not for a month, I did it for a weekend. It was just a weekend trek that I went with a group where I knew nobody, and I sort of didn't really reveal anything about myself. And that weekend was one of the most refreshing weekends of my life, because I didn't have to carry that image of Ramya with me. And when nobody else had images of Ramya, that I could let go of all those images. So I can just imagine how wonderful doing that for a month would have been. So thank you for that, Saloni. I think it's a great, great activity that people can engage in if they're, looking to recraft their identity from inside, which you have to do when you recraft your world outside, because you don't want it to be something else outside and something else inside. I'm going to ask you a few difficult and common questions that I get asked by people, right? One thing that I often get asked is about money, salary. And you may or may not resonate with the word that I'm using. Maybe it's too strong, but some of us have experienced it that way, me as well as others, almost like an addiction to salary, because it's like every month, no matter what, you get a fixed paycheck in your bank account, right? So it's very comfortable, it's coming, and then it's like sugar, right? We get used to it. Our system gets used to it. So A, did you experience any of that? And B, if you did, how did you work your way out of that?
I thankfully was only responsible for me. And I typically don't lead a high expense life. The biggest expense I was undertaking was moving out in the same city and paying rent, and so maybe that was what others would spend on things. I'd spent on building my world. But yeah, there is, as you said, there is a certain addiction of comfort. Okay, even if I mess up, paisa to aega, right? And it was not an easy thing to do, because I have, since I turned 21, I have been financially independent. So to even have the idea that I may have to put my hand in front of somebody else, even today, it's a very scary idea. I never want to, and maybe it's also a limiting belief as an entrepreneur, and we'll come to that, but कि किसी और से ऐसे हाथ नहीं करना है मुझे. Like in a very simple way, for me, the idea is that I never want to be standing like this. If I'm doing this, I'm fine. I don't have any aspiration of doing this. Very honestly, I'm not even like, oh, I want to have that power to give, because I look at it as a power to give. I'm like, I just never want to be doing this. And that was my fear more than anything else. The way I dealt with it was, I was like, okay, how much money do I have in the bank? Which is there, liquid. Thankfully, I was not a spender, so I had savings after everything, like paying my bills and paying off my loans and everything. I still had decentish amount of savings. I was like, okay, let me look at what is the amount of money I need to live. And if I choose to live even, and I'm a frugal person, if I choose to live even more frugally, and frugal doesn't mean I don't give myself things I want. It just means that I really just don't feel the need to spend that much. Like I find it a waste to go to a bar and spend 600 rupees on a glass of wine when I can get an entire bottle for 1200 maybe. Something like that. I would do it once in a while, but it was not something like, so I was just, my relationship with money has been that. I was like, okay, how much do I need to live? How long, if nothing goes wrong, how long is my runway? What is the buffer I need in case something goes wrong with my family or there's a medical expense needed? What is my buffer I need for that medical expense? So it was all done in my head, or like back of the envelope calculations, But I realized absolute worst case, I still have a 1 year runway. And best case, I had a 3 year runway if I didn't earn a penny before I went bankrupt. So
Love
I
it.
knew when I will go bankrupt. Like in my absolute where I don't earn a single penny, my worst case of going bankrupt and my best case, I'm honestly nobody knows. But at that point, my worst case and my best case were mapped out, and I knew how much time I have.
Beautiful. And Saloni, I'm so glad you spelled it out so clearly, because I do think that's so important. It's like you had the plan B, the same thing, you had the awareness, and it takes some homework, right? You need to sit down and say, if I live frugally, which is, yeah, making all these choices and trade-offs you talked about, this is so, a lot of us don't even know what our monthly expenses. So actually putting that down, putting it into, do I want 6 months? Do I need a year? Do I have children? What else, right? What is compromisable? What is not? Drawing that, and then giving yourself the permission to fly out of the nest as you did. So thank you for that. That's so wise. And I do think that's almost, what's the word for that, non-compromisable. But yeah, I think it's great if you can do that. So lovely. So looking at what you're doing today, sorry, yeah, so looking at what you do today, I'm going to ask you how you look at success, and if success is too loaded a word, just how you look at your return on time invested. So I like this phrase, it's called ROTI, return on time invested. And when we're in the corporate world or in an employed role, a lot of us just think it's the money, right? We forget about all the other things that it could be, like growth, enjoyment, networks, self-expression, everything. So when you're on your own, it becomes, you really start recognizing that your returns is possibly not just monetary. There's a whole lot more to it. So how would you look at it today, and what does it feel like?
I love the term roti. So when I was I'm going to take one step back for a minute. When I was in in college, like doing my masters, a bunch of people came and said, "Why aren't you doing consulting? You have the orientation to be in consulting, like, because you've done projects, case studies, so you can sense whose strengths are what." And I was like, my only response was, I don't want to live that life of working 14 hours a day and then have no space for the rest of life. So thankfully for me, I was, and I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but even when I was 24 or 25, I was very certain my life cannot just be work. I have only so many hours and I can't do it. Like if you see my expression right now, and even as an entrepreneur, the reason I'm going slow is I don't work. A lot of entrepreneurs work insane 12, 14, 16 hours, right? I chose, and none of them is right or wrong. It's about what you care about. I chose not to work those hours, and it means I don't care. I could just be sitting and just looking outside right now at my plants in the terrace, and I'm just sitting and I'm doing nothing, and I'm fine with that. I want that for my life, but I did peg that, okay, you know what, this is the amount of time I want to put in, and this is the amount of money I need to make for that time.
Beautiful.
So because I'm in a knowledge business or a services business, it's a little easier to map that, because you charge for your time in some way. So yeah, like, and it can vary. There are weeks and months where I've worked those 12 hours, but then there are days and weeks and months where I'm not working more than 20 hours a week, sometimes not even that much. And it comes with its own stressors. So before somebody thinks like, "Arey, main bhi ye life," that ball spot is because of that. I'm very mindful of not romanticizing entrepreneurship. Because there is always a trade-off, and you're choosing the trade-off, and you're choosing the pain that comes with that trade-off.
Yeah. So going back to using your own words, which problems do you want to have in your life, right? Choosing. And I love the other word you use, choosing, right? So choosing these kinds of fears, these kinds of problems, these kinds of adventures I'm signing up for and taking ownership for those. So, lovely, Saloni. Thank you. So just before we, wind up and close up, what would be, I think you've already taken people through a lot of advice points and tips, but just to sort of, if I were to ask you your top 3 to anyone who's considering leaving a 9 to 5 safe salary job and making it on their own, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice?
I would say 1, ask yourself how comfortable you are with uncertainty. Because that is the middle name of entrepreneurship, if it had a middle name. And how, I would say, how comfortable you are with uncertainty and how will it affect if you have responsibilities. How will it affect the people around you? And also, how will it affect your mental health? We didn't get a chance to talk about mental health, which is a very big factor also in my life. But yeah, that would be my number 1 advice. A lot of people don't account for it. Number 2 would be know what you're getting into in terms of financially. Money may not buy you happiness. When you don't have it, you're definitely struggling.
It can buy you the unhappiness and the pain and the stress and the trauma.
Yeah.
The lack of it can.
The lack of it. So, no, I would genuinely, and this is more for, I would say, the younger ones, because usually people in their 40s and 50s have accumulated their nest egg.
Yeah.
But for the more younger ones, just know how you're going to function financially and know what that means in terms of lifestyle also. Often people don't account for lifestyle. And how will that affect them as an individual? Say somebody who likes to go partying and pubbing or having pretty fancy clothes. If you don't have it, is it going to affect your entire mindset? Because mindset wins. Hands down, mindset wins.
Yes.
Hard work. Hands down.
Second that, double that, triple that. Yes.
Hands down. Because if you have the right mindset and you work smart, you will achieve 100x more than just pure hard work with the wrong mindset.
Yeah. And just talking about putting together 2 things that you said about lifestyle, knowing your lifestyle, choosing your lifestyle. And if you want to change your lifestyle, you can do that also, right? So just like maybe you have a current lifestyle where you are going and buying clothes that are 10K, but and it's not like a prescription, but if you want to, you could inquire into it, reflect on it and say, would a 500 rupee dress work just as well? And if so, then would you be willing to even
in fact, if somebody wants and they're not sure, cut back your lifestyle, transfer your money to another account, which you can't touch. Live with that frugal money while you're doing it. Try it out.
Wear it. If it doesn't work, you can go back to the earlier lifestyle. Yeah. No one's lovely. Such a practical tip there, Saloni. I love that. Just like a 1-month experiment of living in a new place. Do a 1-month experiment of frugal lifestyle and see if it works.
Yeah, because and you have to not have access to those funds. You have to be like, "Arey, ab kaise hoga?" Right? And you're not going to get money. It's a little bit of playing the game. It won't be the same, but yeah. And I would say the third advice, honestly, would be friends with failure.
Wow.
Be friends with failure. I sucked the first time I did a workshop. I go back and I laugh at how I even thought it was a good workshop. And those failures may not necessarily be your fault or somebody else's fault, or I don't like using the word fault. And you may have failures just because you were careless. And it costs a lot more when you're an entrepreneur. But if you're not friends with failure, you ain't gonna survive. Like, and when I say survive, I mean just
Even mentally, right?
yeah, just like mentally, you can still have money coming in, but yeah, it's gonna be that much. It's a hard road, but it's gonna be that much harder. Having said that, but I don't want to discourage entrepreneurs. Just ask yourself the addiction or the safety net or whatever of the money versus everything else that you may not like about being in a 9 to 5, right? We often do not look at the cost.
The opportunity cost. Yeah.
Yeah, like the cost of being in 9 to 5 to us in so many other ways. I have described all the hardship and all the pain. What I have not shared is why I'm still here. And that is because I was sure of one thing I want to work. And this was something I knew deep down that I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to work with people I like.
Wow.
And that was because for me, one big realization was I am affected by the energy around me and the people around me massively. Not a little, massively. So I was very certain I don't care what I'm doing, I'm going to do it with people I like. And it happened. 95% of my clients are people I like. Especially my one-on-one clients. Like in a group, you may still get like people you're like, I inherently like people, but like in my one-on-one clients, 95% of them are people I like. I have found my evangelists, my supporters. I don't do advertising, which means my business grows only organically and word of mouth. I teach LinkedIn writing, but because I am stuck somewhere in my head after losing my dad, I haven't written in 5 months. And I'm still running a business about writing. All of this, honestly, because I work with people I like.
Wow. So yeah, just when I thought we were winding up, you take us really deep into, the reason. You nailed it when you said, we are affected by the energies of people that we interact with and work with, and really your reason to be on your own is to have that choice, to have that freedom, to have your to give
Time.
yourself the permission, yeah, time and permission to design your work on your own terms,
Yeah.
right? In terms of the people you want to do work with and the kind of work you want to do as well. So thank you there. Choice, and permissions is what I'm getting from your interview. So
Yeah, I
thank
have
you
walked
so
away
much.
from work I don't like. People I liked. I walked away from work I don't like, not knowing where the next 1,000 rupees will come. It was a gig. It was a consulting gig. I was not on. We were not aligned on the work, and everybody was like, "But Sal, kuch to paisa aayega." And that is, I think, the last piece of advice. I know you said three, but this is extremely important and literally something I told somebody yesterday. You need to, and this is not entrepreneurship alone. This is life. You need to remove the crap to create space for the amazing. So there is a huge power to no as much as there is a power to yes. It's not either yes or no, it is both. And maybe also, but please learn to say no to crap because unless you clear that space in your life, you may not know what's coming, but that can't come. It's filled with crap. Remove it.
I love that, Saloni. Thank you. And this was amazing. And if I can just add to that, a little bit of introspection to even start recognizing what is crap in your life today, right? Because all our craps are different. And sometimes the crap has also been knowingly chosen because we thought it would be something else, but it's turned out to be the crap or the jails or the other things. So recognizing that, being honest about, okay, this is now acting like crap in my life, and clearing it out so that the fresh new can come in. So thank you so much, Saloni. Thanks for being our guest on this. And I'm just going to call it pearls of wisdom that you have brought in throughout this conversation. And we will be putting more details about you and the work that you descriptions if anyone wants to learn more about Saloni, her journey, or contact her. And thank you. If you are someone who's looking to craft your life and work in a way that is more in line with your inner rhythm, then do visit my website, www.craftingourlives.com. You'll find it in the description, because I have a host of resources put together for you. And this is based on 20 years of my own research and work with people as a coach in this area. I also have a free newsletter, so your starting points should be to sign up for my newsletter, subscribe to this channel to stay updated for further videos, and to go on to the edX site and look for my free MOOC course there titled Crafting Realities, Work, Happiness and Meaning, and then reach out to me if you need further assistance. I also offer private coaching, as well as I run group coaching sessions, and I also conduct residential retreats, and you can find all that information on my website or in the newsletter as and when we announce it.